Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the high-stakes world of semiconductor specialist Skyworks Solutions. We're going to be using some great insights from a Compasscope research report, plus the company's own latest updates to really figure out what makes these guys tick.
So here's the game plan. First, we'll get into what Skyworks actually does. Then we'll check out the competition, unpack their strategy for growth, and of course, look at the risks. After that, we'll take a quick pulse from their latest company news and wrap it all up with the key things you want to keep an eye on.
All right, let's jump right in. What is Skyworks? At its heart, this company is all about one thing: connection.
To put it simply, Skyworks makes these absolutely critical chips. They're called radio frequency, or RF chips, that let your phone, your car, even your Wi-Fi router connect to wireless networks. They're kind of the unsung heroes of our connected world.
Now, if you follow the money, you'll see it splits into two big buckets. About 65% of it comes from the massive mobile market. Yep, that means smartphones. The other 35% comes from what they call broad markets, which is, a mix of everything else: automotive, Wi-Fi, the Internet of Things, the whole shebang.
But here's where it gets really interesting. When you dig into that giant mobile slice of the pie, there is one number that tells you almost everything you need to know: 69%. So what's that all about?
That's right. Nearly 70% of their entire business depends on one customer: Apple. And folks, this is the classic double-edged sword for Skyworks. It's their biggest strength. What a partnership to have. But it's also, without a doubt, their biggest risk. So how does that huge reliance on Apple play out in the real world? Well, it throws them right into a seriously competitive arena. They're definitely not playing this game alone.
And you've got a real mix of players here. On one side, you have another RF specialist like Qorvo, who's in a very similar boat. But on the other side, you have these absolute giants, like Broadcom and Qualcomm. And those guys don't just do RF, they integrate it with the whole system on a chip, which is basically the phone's brain. Totally different ballgame. And this right here really gets to the core of it. Skyworks is a laser-focused specialist, and their fate is tied to the ups and downs of the smartphone market. A competitor like Broadcom, though, they're a behemoth. They're playing in data centers, networking, AI, you name it. That diversification gives them a huge advantage.
And this is where it gets a little rough, at least according to that Compasscope report. It basically says that because customers, like Apple, can switch suppliers without a ton of hassle, and Skyworks can't really charge a premium for their parts, they don't have what you'd call a strong, lasting competitive edge. Ouch.
Okay, so if you're Skyworks and you've got that kind of pressure breathing down your neck, what's your move? How do you plan to grow?
Well, first, you got to understand the storm they're sailing into. The amount of money they make from the parts inside each new iPhone is actually expected to go down. We're talking from around $12 in past years to maybe just $7 by fiscal 2027. That means they have to find growth somewhere else, and fast.
So, to fight back against that squeeze, they're not just sitting still. They're pushing hard to diversify. They're going after next-gen Wi-Fi, the booming connected car market, and crucial parts for data centers. This is where that whole broad markets business becomes so important.
But their other big move, well, it's a real blockbuster. They're planning to merge with their biggest direct competitor, Qorvo. The idea here is pretty simple. Team up, create one massive RF specialist, and get more scale, more power, and a bigger product list to compete with the giants.
But as with any big, ambitious plan, this one is packed with some major hurdles. It's not a guaranteed win by any means.
And the risks are pretty clear. You've got that massive reliance on Apple, you're tied to the roller coaster of the smartphone market, and then there's the huge challenge of actually getting regulators to approve a merger with your biggest rival. That is a tall order.
Okay, so that's the big picture analysis. Now let's zoom in and get a pulse check, straight from the horse's mouth on their latest earnings call.
So, on their November 4th call, the CEO, Phil Brace, came out sounding pretty confident. He was talking about strong momentum in both their main mobile business and in those all-important broad markets. And hey, he had the numbers to back it up. They pulled in $1.1 billion in revenue for the quarter, which was better than expected. And that was fueled by both mobile sales and some real strength in those broad markets. And this is a really key detail. The CEO made a point to call out their automotive business. Remember, that's a huge piece of their diversification plan. He said it was hitting a new record run rate, which is a great sign that their push into new areas is actually working. But it
wasn't all sunshine and roses. When they looked ahead to the next quarter, their guidance pointed to a bit of a drop in revenue. Now, they said this is just normal seasonality, but it does show that their growth path isn't just a straight line up.
All right, let's put this all together. If you're keeping an eye on Skyworks, what are the absolute must-watch items on your list? The Compasscope report really boils it down to these key things. And number one, by a long shot, is that Apple dependency. That is the central story here. Right behind that is whether they can actually grow that broad markets business. And of course, the big one, can they get that mega merger with Qorvo across the finish line? And that leaves us with this final, crucial question that really gets to the heart of Skyworks' future. Is this merger with Qorvo a brilliant, strategic move to create a stronger, tougher specialist that can actually fight back? Or does it just create a bigger, slower target for the real giants of this industry? That, right there, is the multi-billion-dollar question.